My earliest recollections are like fragmented images shaded with sadness. Dad, frozen in a photo tucked away in an old album, was gone before I even turned 5. Mom, Anna, became the storm that loomed over our tiny home. One moment, she'd be scrubbing the kitchen obsessively, muttering about starting over. The next, she'd pull me into a suffocating hug, holding me so tightly it left me gasping for air. These rare embraces, though far between, were the only expressions of love I ever got. Most of the time, I was just a shadow, trailing behind her. She would dart around the apartment, her face clouded with a perpetual worry that seemed to consume her. Sometimes, when the worry lines became deeper, she'd leave me with Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs. When she returned, the air would crackle with tension, like static. She'd run her fingers through my hair absent-mindedly, an act that felt more like an obligation than a gesture of care. Then a fleeting smile would appear, as if to remind me that somewhere beneath the surface there was love. Mom started dating again. Alex, a man with laugh lines around his eyes, entered our lives. Unlike the whirlwind of energy that was Mom, he exuded calm and treated me with a kindness I wasn't used to in our strained home. One afternoon, after a particularly humiliating encounter at school with Jessica Miller and her group, I found myself clinging to Alex on the couch, tears blurring my vision. "Why do they always pick on me?" I whispered, the familiar ache of loneliness tightening in my chest. He knelt down to meet my eyes, his expression filled with concern, a rarity from the adults in my life. "They pick on you because they're insecure," he explained gently, brushing away a tear. "They try to feel bigger by making others feel smaller." His words were like balm to a wound I didn't even know I had. For a brief moment, I dared to hope that things could get better. But hope in my world was always delicate, easily crushed. Then came Lily, a tiny bundle with eyes just like Mom's. She arrived a year later, and suddenly, I wasn't the center of attention. All the love and affection seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cold detachment. Mom's focus shifted entirely to Lily, leaving me to stumble through my childhood on my own. At 14, I was an awkward mess. Braces, frizzy hair, and a knot of insecurity bigger than anything I could explain. It was also the age when Mom's harshness toward me blossomed into full-blown cruelty. Take picture day, for example. Mom took the day off work to obsess over Lily's pigtails and find the perfect dress. When it came time for me to get ready, she sighed loudly and rifled through my closet. "Ah, nothing decent," she muttered. Of course, on picture day, Lily looked like a princess while I resembled a rumpled mess beside her. Mom showered Lily's photo with praise while mine barely got a second glance. Alex, ever the gentle soul, tried to be a positive influence. He'd take me shopping, helping me find clothes that fit well and made me feel good about myself. One day, after a particularly frustrating argument with Mom, I found myself clinging to him, desperate for some kind of comfort. "Dad," I said before I could stop myself. He froze, his face falling with a sadness I didn't understand. Mom appeared in the doorway, eyes blazing. "You have one father, Elena," she hissed, her voice venomous. "And he deserves you." Her words hit me like a slap. Alex awkwardly patted my hair. "It's okay," he said, his voice uncertain. "It's not okay," I managed to choke out, my eyes filling with tears. Lily, standing nearby with a smug expression, suddenly chimed in. "Elena took my candy again, Daddy." She didn't ask. By 16, dating was a battlefield. Mom had a knack for ruining any potential relationship before it could even begin. Take Mark, for example. Tall, funny, and with a smile that could melt glaciers, he was everything a teenage girl could dream of. After weeks of nervous texts and shy glances, I finally gathered the courage to ask him out. He said yes. Excitement filled me, but the dread of him meeting Mom loomed large. The night of our date, Mom went into overdrive. She spent hours getting Lily's bedtime story just right. When Mark finally arrived, nervous but sweet, Mom greeted him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Elena never cleans her room," she said casually, as though we were talking about the weather. "You might find socks and pizza boxes under the pile of clothes." My face burned with embarrassment. Mark gave an awkward laugh, but the silence stretched uncomfortably. The evening continued downhill from there. Mom made snide remarks about my weight, my music tastes, even my choice of college. By the end of the night, Mark bolted, leaving me feeling deflated and humiliated. The pattern repeated with each new guy. Every time I brought someone home, Mom would make sure to dig at me with backhanded compliments and subtle insults. My self-esteem plummeted, and any relationship that showed potential fizzled out before it could grow. By 18, the age of college applications and the desire to escape, I became determined to break free. Every acceptance letter was a small victory, a glimmer of hope breaking down the wall Mom had built around me. When I told her I'd been accepted to a university far away, her reaction was pure passive aggression. "Oh, Elena," she sighed, shaking her head. "So far. How will we ever see each other?" "It's called video chat, Mom," I replied, my voice steady. "And airplanes exist, you know." Alex, as always, was thrilled for me. "This is incredible, Elena," he said, pulling me into a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you." His words were a comforting embrace. He might not have been my biological father, but he had been there for me more than the man who left us all those years ago. College was a revelation. Surrounded by people who didn't know my family history, I could finally breathe. I thrived in an environment that challenged me academically and offered friendships built on mutual respect. At 27, living in a tiny apartment that felt like a mansion compared to my childhood room, life, for the most part, was good. My job as an economist kept me sharp, and David, my wonderful boyfriend, filled my life with warmth and laughter. One evening, as we shared takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine, David dropped a bombshell. He looked at me with that familiar goofy grin I couldn't resist and said, "I think it's about time we meet each other's families." My heart did a flip. Meeting David's parents was a breeze. His cozy house with a backyard smelling of fresh grass felt like stepping into a warm embrace. His mom, Sarah, showered me with affection, while his dad, Michael, had me laughing so hard I nearly snorted my drink. They were easygoing, funny, and genuinely curious about who I was. It felt natural, something I had never experienced with family dinners back in my old life. But the thought of David meeting my, well, complicated family sent a wave of dread through me. How could I explain the years of emotional neglect, the constant put-downs, and the crushing negativity? I told him everything, the arguments, the tears, how my mom had chipped away at my confidence for years. Lily, unsurprisingly, hadn't changed. She was now a pro at pushing all my buttons. David listened quietly, his hand resting gently over mine. "Elena," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I'm marrying you, not your family, their baggage, but you're the treasure." His words hit me like a lifeline, washing away years of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally create the loving family I always wanted, the kind of family I deserved, despite the one I came from. My stomach turned as I dialed Alex's number. This was it, the moment I had to tell him about David and the engagement. "Hey, Elena, what's going on?" Alex's voice was warm as always. "Hey, Alex," I replied, trying to steady my nerves. "There's something I need to tell you." I went on to explain everything: David, the proposal, the wedding plans. There was a long pause, followed by a joyful laugh. "Elena, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you both." His excitement calmed my nerves, and I let out a sigh of relief. "You have to bring him over for dinner. Let me meet the guy who finally snatched you up." David, ever the sport, agreed. So a few weeks later, we found ourselves pulling up to my childhood home, still a place that brought a mix of nostalgia and dread. Mom opened the door with a surprised smile. "Elena, you came to visit. And who's this handsome gentleman?" she asked, eyes scanning David with a scrutinizing gleam. "Mom, this is David, my fiancé," I said, trying for a friendly smile. David stepped forward, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner." Mom's grin grew wider as she took his hand with enthusiasm. "The pleasure's all mine, dear." "So David, what do you do for a living?" Mom asked, her tone casually probing. David dove into an explanation of his work as a director at a large company, completely unaware of the sharp edge in her question. Alex jumped in with a joke, keeping the mood light. Lily, of course, wasn't about to let anyone steal the spotlight. She spent the whole meal flirting with David, interrupting our conversations to ask him more about his job and hobbies. Mom, ever the doting mother, hung on Lily's every word, throwing in veiled criticisms towards me along the way. "Sweetheart," she said, dripping with fake sweetness, "maybe you should take some fashion tips from Lily. That dress you're wearing, well, it's not exactly flattering." David seemed oblivious to the tension, but I knew exactly what Mom was doing, making me feel small and insecure in front of my fiancé. The entire dinner felt like a performance where I was constantly reminded that I wasn't good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough. By the time dessert came around, I was ready to flee. As soon as we could politely excuse ourselves, we left. The second we were in the car, David let out a long sigh. "Your mom, she's something else, huh?" he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yeah," I muttered, feeling exhausted. "She sure is." David squeezed my hand. "But hey, we made it through dinner, right?" He was right, we had. Even with Mom's negativity hanging in the air, just holding David's hand gave me a sense of strength. This was my future, a future I was building with him, not my dysfunctional family. The calm after the storm settled as David and I curled up on the couch, flipping through wedding magazines. We dreamed of a small, intimate ceremony in a vineyard, surrounded by the people who loved and supported us. It was perfect. Then the next morning, everything came crashing down. My phone buzzed with David's name, his usual cheerful ringtone replaced by a tone that sent a shiver down my spine. "Elena," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "We've got a problem." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" He took a breath. "Your mom." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What did she do now?" David explained, and each word hit me like a punch. Somehow, Mom had tracked down David's work phone number, and instead of offering congratulations, she unleashed a tirade that would have made a sailor blush. Apparently, in her mind, I was everything that was wrong with the world. Ugly, boring, and socially awkward. And it didn't stop there. She dragged Dad into it, using his past abandonment against me like a weapon. The worst part? She suggested David ditch me and go after Lily, claiming my younger sister was the perfect mix of beauty and brains. Anger exploded inside me. How dare she? How dare she try to destroy my happiness again? David, bless him, was equally furious, but he had a plan. A crazy, bold plan that felt both risky and exhilarating. "We expose her," he said, his jaw set. "We set a trap." His plan was simple but daring. He would call Mom back, act like he was swayed by her words, and arrange a meeting to discuss this absurd suggestion. His goal was to record everything on his phone. David made the call, his voice smooth and convincing. Mom, completely unaware of what was coming, eagerly agreed to meet him for coffee. I couldn't help but laugh nervously. This was it. Operation Momzilla was officially underway. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let my mother control my future anymore. The tables were turning, and I was ready to fight back. I decided to attend the meeting. The thought of confronting Mom, especially while disguised, sent a chill down my spine. But the fury bubbling inside me, the anger at her cruelty and her attempts to ruin my happiness, was a powerful motivator. Dressed in comfy jeans and a worn-out t-shirt, I slipped into a corner booth at a cafe across from the meeting spot. Black glasses completed my disguise, making me just another face in the crowd. Butterflies fluttered wildly in my stomach as I watched Mom strut into the cafe, a grin plastered on her face. She spotted David at the table and her smile grew even wider. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown had begun. David, ever the tech wizard, had quietly switched on the voice recorder on his phone. Me? Well, I was within earshot, so I overheard the entire conversation. It began innocently enough, with David pretending to be the interested suitor. But then, without realizing his phone was recording, Mom launched into her rant. "David," she leaned in, speaking in a hushed tone, "between us, Elena just isn't wife material." I froze. The woman who was supposed to love and protect me, the one who should have had my back, was slandering me to a complete stranger. "She's, well, not very bright," Mom continued, feigning sympathy. "And honestly, she's not all that attractive either, if you catch my drift." David, to his credit, maintained a neutral expression, nodding along and offering vague responses. I could only imagine how furious he must have been. But then Mom whispered conspiratorially, "Now Lily, that girl has potential. Smart, pretty, knows how to present herself." The audacity. Lily, with her ditzy personality and lack of ambition, was somehow the epitome of elegance and intelligence in Mom's eyes. The conversation was a masterclass in manipulation, with Mom even confessing that she had never loved my stepfather and had only married him for his wealth. She had no shame. Finally, after what felt like forever, Mom stood looking pleased with herself. "Well, David, it's been great meeting you. Think about what I've said," she cooed, patting his hand and walking out, her smile a perfect mask of satisfaction. I could only shake my head, disbelief settling over me. "So now what?" I asked, my voice tight with emotion. David pulled me into a comforting hug. "Now," he said firmly, "we expose her." The following weekend, I walked into my childhood home, the air thick with tension. Mom's grin stretched wide, smugness practically radiating off her. "Elena, sweetheart, you won't believe this," she said, practically bursting with excitement. "What is it, Mom?" I braced myself for the bombshell. "David," she said, her voice dripping with fake glee, "he saw the light. He's leaving you and marrying Lily." I felt my heart stutter, but I forced a smile. "That's great, Mom. Really happy for them." My stepdad, always the confused soul, cleared his throat. "But I thought they were getting married." Lily, lounging on the couch like she owned the place, snickered. "Apparently not, Dad. Elena just wasn't good enough for him." Shocking, right? Ignoring her jab, I focused on Mom's triumphant expression. It was time for the reveal. "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice calm and steady, "David's right here." At that moment, David strode in, a slight grin on his face. A collective gasp filled the room. "Hey everyone," he said smoothly, just in time for some family fun. He pulled out his phone, hit play, and Mom's venomous voice filled the room. Her rant about me, her praise for Lily, the confession about my stepdad, all of it played for everyone to hear. Mom's face turned white as a ghost with every word. My stepdad looked like he'd seen a ghost, his jaw slack in shock. As for Lily, her confidence melted into a terrified whimper. When the recording ended, the room was dead silent. Then my stepdad exploded. "You lying traitor," he bellowed, his voice shaking with rage. "You've been with me all these years for my money." For the first time ever, Mom looked genuinely stunned. Tears welled in her eyes, but my stepdad's anger overshadowed everything else. "I want a divorce," he growled. "Get a lawyer." The house erupted. Mom and Lily broke down in sobs, their cries filled with misery and self-pity. David, poor guy, looked like a deer caught in headlights, caught in a storm. But amid the chaos, I felt oddly calm. The truth was finally out, ugly as it was. Years of hidden pain, manipulation, and lies spilled into the open, shattering the illusion of our dysfunctional family. In the weeks that followed, things became a blur of sobs from my stepdad and cold stares from Lily whenever I saw her at the store. Mom, the mastermind behind it all, disappeared from social media. As for me, I felt strangely hollow. The anger that had fueled me for so long was gone, leaving an empty space inside. One bright afternoon, David found me curled up on the couch, flipping through wedding magazines that now felt like relics from another life. "Hey," he said softly, concern lacing his voice. "You alright?" I offered a weak smile. "Yeah, just thinking. Everything feels so different now." He sat beside me, pulling me into a tight hug. "It is," he agreed. "But hey, different can be good. It's a chance for something fresh, you know." His words were like a spark. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could fill the void left by my mother with something new, something better. A glimmer of hope stirred inside me. I glanced up at him with a mischievous smile. "What do you say we do something crazy?" David raised an eyebrow. "Crazy? Like what?" "How about a road trip?" I grinned, excitement bubbling inside me. Just us, a map, and the open road. No expectations, no deadlines, just adventure. "You had me at road trip," he said, his face lighting up. And so we set a new course. What was supposed to be an extravagant vineyard wedding transformed into a spontaneous cross-country adventure. We packed up an old camper van with snacks, a killer playlist, and a worn copy of On the Road. And just drove. No destination, just the promise of new experiences and shared memories. A year later, David and I stood at the altar, exchanging vows beneath a canopy of blooming flowers. It wasn't the grand affair I had once imagined, but it was perfect. Instead of a disapproving mother, my stepdad, now recently divorced and estranged from Lily, walked me down the aisle. His eyes were filled with pride and regret, and as he squeezed my hand, he whispered, "I always knew you'd find your happily ever after." After the wedding, life settled into a new, comfortable rhythm. David and I built a life full of love, laughter, and the occasional road trip. My stepdad became a regular visitor, regaling us with tales of his adventures and joking about wanting to be a grandpa one day. With a laugh, I tease him, "Don't worry, you'll be the best grandpa ever." Thanks for watching and stay stunned. See you in the next video.